Hello everyone. So I wanted to do a video covering Bernie's town hall, and I wanted to just do some quick updates on certain issues. So Ilhan Omar is in the crossfire again for comments that she made, I believe in March, and they referenced 9/11. So first of all, it was at a group called CAIR, which is spelled CAIR, the Council for American Islamic Relations, and the comments that she made that are under fire right now, this is her exact quote. She said, "Some people did something," which is referring to 9/11, "and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties." So, let me just, I guess, address the elephant in the room. You know, it's not exactly the most eloquently worded statement, and I could understand, some people did something that does seem a little bit minimizing what's going on, but the fact of the matter to me is that her statement is still true. It speaks to a real issue, and this is documented fact that Muslim Americans have been, discriminated against since 9/11, and probably before that, but especially after 9/11. And I mean, we see the result of that and it's because of the Patriot Act, and that that entailed spying on all Americans. But we know that Muslims were very heavily scrutinized in this. And I had read like basically every Muslim male was spied on at some point in this country post 9/11. And another example would be Obama droning American civilians. This happened towards the latter half of his term, and so someone else, like basically this guy who was associated with terrorism, he was the target, and a 16-year-old related to him, who was an American citizen, was in the collateral damage of that. And, you might brush that off and say, like, oh, and people did. Someone, I don't know who, said, like, he should have had a better father. So someone associated with the American military. But that is it's a violation of human rights, a violation of your civil liberties. Like you're droning someone who is innocent, first of all, but no due process involved at all. So we know as a matter of fact that her comment is still true. Like if you want to have a conversation about the wording of it, I'm open to being more sensitive to describing 9/11. I understand that. However, what happens is people go far off the rails, and Trump is one of them, who try and mischaracterize what she said and make it look like it's part of this, sinister agenda, if you will. On Fox and Friends, you had Brian Kilmeade question whether or not she's American enough, basically. And then Trump tweeted a video that didn't provide the full context. It said it only had the "some people did something" part, not the latter half of the sentence. So that's about as bad a mischaracterization as you can get. And Dan Crenshaw, who is I believe he's in the House now. He's newly elected, and he's a right winger, so he's kind of a MAGA boy, if you will. And he, went on the offense on this too. And meanwhile, he hangs out with all kinds of shady white supremacist type folks. And interestingly enough, CAIR, people on the right would call CAIR a terrorist organization, I'm sure, but the association, the group associated with Seb Gorka, I mean, he's not in the administration anymore, but a group associated with Seb Gorka is considered a hate group by the State Department, and there's never any talk on the right about white supremacy and the problems that creates. When you boil it down, Islamic extremism is not a big problem within the United States. And so I think people get hung up in like these philosophical debates, and it's just like, oh yeah, well, Islamic extremism is worse or whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, well, I'm not even that interested in trying to like compare like the two ideologies side by side and say like which ones were like I would say extremism is bad no matter what, really, especially if it's violent extremism. But in America, it makes perfect sense to prioritize what is the bigger threat. And we know, as a matter of fact, Homeland Security data backs this up, that white supremacy and right-wing extremism is a much bigger problem than Muslim extremism in this country. So I wish that people on the right would and they're obviously not going to do this, they would be more consistent and more logical in their approach. But of course, that's very not going to happen. Let's put it that way. And then Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, they have nothing to offer as well. I mean, like, they throw Ilhan Omar under the bus. They were at AIPAC and they were furthering the smears and mischaracterizations of Ilhan Omar, trying to say like she was trying to say Jews have dual loyalty. She didn't say anything like that. She was talking about Congress people taking donations from AIPAC. So there's just no help for progressives amongst the Democratic leadership, and that's a problem. It's a problem when you have these leaders signaling these things, and even this is not exactly related to Ilhan Omar specifically, but Nancy Pelosi was on 60 Minutes, and she dismissed the progressive wing in the groups, like, oh, that's just 5 people, not a big deal. And she even also said, like, I think they know that we have to hold the center. Like, completely ridiculous. So first of all, the 5 people thing. It's certainly the case that the Democratic establishment is mostly centrist. So the people who have like all the power are centrists, and there's not necessarily a lot of people like AOC and Ilhan Omar. But again, like that lacks a lot of context, because AOC has the biggest social media following of like any congressperson. And then, like hers is particularly big, but Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, like all these people, they have very much bigger social media followings, and that means the people are on their side, largely. So she's leaving out that, like, yeah, it may be, a small number of people that are insurgent right now, but they are where the popularity is. They are where the people align with. So she's afraid, Nancy Pelosi. She's trying to dismiss this and trying to, nip it in the bud and make it look like it's not a problem, because she knows it's a problem. And final thing is, on that, I really want AOC and Ilhan Omar to stop playing freaking patty cakes with the Democratic establishment. I mean, I stole that from Secular Talk, actually. But it's absolutely true that they need to step up their game now. Enough is enough in terms of the fact that, like, Nancy Pelosi throws these people under the bus. It's not just Ilhan Omar. She'll do it to AOC, too, like in the 60 Minutes interview. So the problem is, I think the progressives, that I understand the frustration, because they don't want to necessarily speak out against the powerful establishment types, because they fear that their power will be diminished, perhaps in the form of committee appointments and so on. So I understand that. But I think if they were to, speak up against Nancy Pelosi and other Democratic establishment types, if they were to speak boldly against them, and let's say that their power is diminished somehow, I think you're going to have an outcry of people express that and say, like, what the hell are you doing, Nancy Pelosi? And they're going to bow to pressure. Like, at the end of the day, as long as the pressure is there, as long as there's people angry and telling the Democratic establishment what's up, then there will be that they are going to concede on certain things. I think, same goes for almost anything like Medicare for all. But the problem is you need a lot of pressure in order for that to work. So as I would like to see that happen, basically, but I think it's there. I think you just have to show that to the establishment. So then we're going to go to the Mueller report. So the redacted version is to be released on Thursday. Now, so far, Mueller's team has only questioned Barr's assessment of the obstruction question, obstruction of justice. But so far, no one has disputed the finding of no collusion between Trump and Russia. So, I find that very interesting. I mean, because mainstream media obviously is having a field day talking about this still. But, I think it's ultimately possible someone might come out and contradict the no collusion finding. It seems unlikely, but I suppose it's not out of the realm of possibility. But they're still speculating like crazy. Like Rachel Maddow, after the Barr the Barr summary, was like, "Oh, well, there's still 15 questions we need answered," and it's like, will Trump acknowledge Russia interfered in the election? And it's like, yeah, okay. You're setting the bar, high, you're setting it high for Trump because, obviously, Trump is Trump. He's not gonna acknowledge things like that. He's not gonna do what you want him to do. And I wish people would stop framing it in that way. It's like, oh, we're trying to get Trump to admit that Russia's bad. Man, that's gonna help so much. There's questions, yeah. But ultimately, I think this issue gets hyper-focused on, as I've said, countless times. So let's just see what the report says. It's a redacted version again. They're never going to do full transparency because this is how intelligence stuff works. They're always going to say national security and you can't reveal certain things, and perhaps for good reason. I don't know. But I tend to think a lot of the times when things are classified, it's because of something embarrassing that the government does not want you to know. And that could be, pockets of the government, like maybe the FBI is embarrassed about a particular detail. Barr said, and this got a lot of controversy, that he thinks that they were spying on the Trump team. And he's like, well, I don't know if that was properly predicated, but I'd like to look into that because I think it's wrong that if campaigns are spied on in an unwarranted way by the government. That got controversy, I guess, because everyone is just anti-Trump in the media except for Fox News. So it's like, oh, well, how could you question whether it was properly predicated or something, bro? Like, it wasn't spying, it was an investigation or something. We'll see. That's all I can tell you. It's just, I think it gets too ridiculous when it comes to Russia. And that leads me to Venezuela, because Russians are getting involved now, and I believe they're sending troops there. But regardless, Trump is warning them to stay out. And, this is very much reminiscent. I think they even use the words of stop their influence, so on and so forth. This is very reminiscent of the 1980s with Reagan, because the argument was we have to topple these left-wing governments in South America because we can't let the spread of communism come to our hemisphere. And from CNN recently, the Pentagon said that they're developing military options in Venezuela because of Russia. So, very slippery slope territory we're heading towards, because I think a lot of people think like, oh, there's no way we're going to get militarily involved in Venezuela, but this is right on the brink now, it seems like. And I wonder, toppling Maduro is one thing, and then what happens then? Are we still involved at that point? It raises questions to me, and also, I mean, like, we should be questioning why we're even involved in Venezuela to begin with. It is not a threat to us. We're not going to be attacked by Venezuela. Yeah, they're an ally of Russia, so what? Like, we're going to start meddling in other countries and declaring their governments defunct. Like, it's completely ridiculous and asinine to me. But that's enough on that. So Bernie had his town hall yesterday. Happened to be in a town very close to me. It was in Bethlehem, where they had the steel stacks in the background, and I'm sure that was very much trying to signal, like, I care about working class people. I'm pro-labor, pro-union, so on. So I think a good move. And the thing is, if another politician had done that, I'd be like, that's kind of pandering. But the thing is, Bernie actually has the policy to back that up, so I can't really begrudge him. And Bernie crushed it. And this goes back to a debate that I guess the left at large has been having, because the DNC recently said, like, we're not going to have debates at Fox News. Fox is not fair and balanced, as they claim. They're not going to be neutral because they're basically the Trump propaganda arm, so we're not going to deal with them. And then Bernie has this Fox News town hall. This is... He ran a clinic in how to demolish Fox News in terms of the framing of things, because he was in charge of that debate. I mean, they had Brett Baier and Martha MacCallum, who were like basically the most bland, nothing host they could find, because obviously I don't think they want to put like Sean Hannity or someone up there like that. They want to put someone who is more an average journalist, and still they try and frame things a certain way, and it failed. It's not only as if like the thing was set up in an unfair way, but like their attempts just failed. Because, first of all, I just want to say, most viewers of Town Hall, for any candidate, something around like 5 million people watch this. So, and a bunch of articles I saw online came to like to the conclusion, that Bernie dominated this thing. Even, establishment outlets like Politico were saying this, and I'm very happy about that, because it shows just how much he's surging now, Bernie. But on so a lot of the town hall was about his economic agenda. They talked a lot about healthcare, and again, like, the Fox News framing of it just fell flat in its face, because they trotted out this argument, which I've seen a lot now, of you have employer-based health insurance, and people like their plan, supposedly. So what happens to those people when you switch to Medicare for all? And so Brett Baier asked, like, how many people have insurance with their employer? A couple people raised their hands. And he's like, how many people like Medicare for all? And the whole room exploded with applause. So, just completely a fail. It's just no way to put it. Like, they wanted to make it look like Bernie is like this radical, and it didn't work, because people are on his side. And I think he even pointed this out. Like, most of Democrats obviously want it, but even 52% of Republicans are in favor of Medicare for all. So, and then obviously Martha MacCallum was like, how are you going to pay for it? Meh, 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 meh. And he gave a great answer, of course, because our system costs more now. So he completely flipped the debate, which is brilliant. I mean, like, talk about, running shit and really demolishing Fox News here. Like, he did something that I don't think any other politician does, is just completely flip the narrative. And instead of trying to be this wonky, like, well, we're going to pay for it this way, we're going to pay for it that way, he just was like, we can't afford to not switch because our system sucks, no one likes it, and it's more expensive. So, A plus on that. And then another plus that I liked is he defended Ilhan Omar because, for first of all, trying to tie him to Ilhan Omar, even though, as Bernie said, like, they barely even talk. But the line that he used that I really liked was, it's not anti-Semitic to criticize a far-right government in Israel, and that's completely true. I think it's obviously ridiculous to equate the two things. And Bernie understands that. My only, I guess, criticism of Bernie is he's starting to not seem as edgy. And I think it's because he's talking about issues that are now more mainstream. I mean, he made Medicare for All about as mainstream as it gets. Free college, So it's the usual suspects. It's very much what you expect from Bernie, but he's not speaking out on a lot of issues that are a little bit more touchy. Like I wish there had been a little bit more specific criticism of the government in Israel. Another point Secular Talk brought up was he's not really talking about what's going on with Julian Assange, which that's problematic for the free press. Regardless of your opinion of Assange, he's being charged with the leaks from Chelsea Manning, which exposed war crimes. So my only complaint is I wish Bernie would still be on that edgy side of things. He would still, speak out on principle, and I think he's afraid to because of losing popularity, perhaps losing power. I mean power in the sense of connections, I guess, in the party. But overall, I mean, he's crushing it. He's doing great. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the next, the first debate is going to be like. I believe it's in June. And we have, people that are definitely going to be in there, I guess, are Pete Buttigieg, Tulsi Gabbard, I believe, reached the threshold, probably Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and I don't know about Cory Booker, maybe. I'm not sure if there's others in that. But it's going to be very interesting to see. I think Bernie is already off to a very strong start, and he's the front runner, and I think a lot of people are starting to come to that conclusion, too.